computer. Okay. Everybody has this paper, so we're going to look at it together. In the left-hand corner, right, in the blue box, and we'll see how this ties into all the discussions we're having about Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So left-hand corner of the blue blocks, you see there are 3 levels. Yep. Dave, you got it there, yeah? Okay. Yes? Give me a, good. So this is from the Gemara in Tractate Shabbos. So the Gemara brings there as follows, that the sages enacted, the Chachamim enacted, established that we celebrate CHANUKA and that we celebrate the miracle of the oil. So when they enacted it, they, to begin with, enacted 3 levels, 3 choices where by one can choose to observe the mitzvah. Number 1 is the basic level of observance, min hadin. So as they enacted it, to fulfill the mitzvah, 1 candle per household each night. So in practical terms, that means that if you only have 8 candles, you're stuck somewhere, you've got 8 candles, can you make a bracha each night? The answer is yes, you're fulfilling the basic mitzvah. Even with a match, you light a match, the shamash is already for a completely different consideration. The shamash burns, right, in order that we shouldn't benefit from the light of the menorah. So there's a shamash burning there that in case the room would be dark, you'd benefit from the shamash and not from the candles, which means if your light is an electrical light on, halachically, there isn't a requirement for a shamash. We put it anyway for other considerations, but for the consideration only for the benefit, if your light is on, you're done. So if you're in a hotel room, stuck, quarantined, and all you have is 8 candles, do you make a bracha every night when you light the menorah? The answer is yes, you're fulfilling the mitzvah. You got matches, each night 1 candle, mitzvah done.
The CHANUKA in the temple, did it have shamash?
No, it wasn't called the CHANUKA either, of course. It was called the menorah. And it had 7 branches, not 8.
Right, no, 7 I knew, but I didn't know if it had shamash.
No, he lit it, and that was, you're right, good question. Which raises a good question, why not? Because you don't benefit from those lights either. The truth is that probably the simple answer, there's nobody there to benefit from it. There were other lights. Yeah, there were other lights, and also it was in the room, the Kodesh, where nobody went, unless you were doing your mitzvah. Unless the Kohen was bringing the incense or offering the bread, so it wouldn't have been, wouldn't have shed light that way. But as you say, there are also other lights. So that's the basic level. You fulfill the mitzvah with 1 candle every night. Then the Chachamim said, if somebody wants to do more, this is a matter of choice. It's called mahadrin. The word mahadrin means hidur, beautiful, or enhanced. So then they enacted, if you want to do it at an enhanced level, then we up the ante. And instead of 1 person in each household, it's 1 candle per person each night in each household. And we're talking about adults only. The obligation is for adults. By custom, something that Rebbe introduced and very much promoted, that children should light their own menorah as well, but we're not talking custom now. We're talking halacha. So the halacha is, on level number 2, that each adult should light their 1 singular candle each night. Then there's level 3. Level 3, as you can see below the dotted line, is mahadrin mina mahadrin. This is a 3rd choice, enhanced within enhanced. So I've indicated that with E times E, enhanced times enhanced. So there's 2 views, which is why we're learning this now, because number 1, it's CHANUKA. Also, we learned about this earlier, we're going to go deeper a little bit. The 2 views. So there's Beis Shammai, and I've indicated that with an arrow pointing downwards and the number 8. Meaning, the Beis Shammai says you start with 8 candles the first night, and so you continue diminishing until you're left, right, with 1 candle the last night. Beis Hillel says, indicated there with an arrow going up, and the number 1 indicating that we start with 1 candle and you increase to 8. Before we go any further, the question has to be addressed. When the sages enacted the 3rd level, surely they said what they meant. Why is it that later, the house of Shammai and the house of Hillel, which obviously come after the enactment of the sages, they came after the story of CHANUKA, hundreds of years. Why are they debating this The sages enact something. They were very clear. Level 1, level 2, what about level 3? The answer is, it appears that what the sages said in level 3 was this: 8 candles. That's what they announced. The question is, 8 candles which way? And what did they do? So, very good question. The answer is that from the get-go, some people did it like Shammai and some people did it like Hillel. And it's at this point in history when the sages want to make a uniform observance for everyone, the matter is debated and ruled upon. But from day one, the sages left it deliberately vague, because either way, you want 8 candles to be lit at some point, either the beginning or the end. This is the same answer, for example, Rabbi Tam's tefillin and Rashi's tefillin. Rabbi Tam and Rashi, they were Rishonim. They lived 900 years ago. What were Jews doing for thousands of years when they put on tefillin? Rashi and Rabbi Tam came up with, they differ in the order of the parshas, the scrolls, in the head and in the hand. What were Jews doing before that? The answer is some like this and some like that. In fact, there are 4 ways to do it. So there were 4 ways to put on tefillin, 4 ways to arrange the parshas. Rashi and Rabbi Tam argue what's the primary way, and at this point, it was ruled to make a singular, a standard. And what was the ruling? Basic, Rashi, want to do more, Rabbi Tam. So the answer to your question is, what did they do? Both. And this was deliberate. It was deliberate, as in the earlier generations, there should be this liberty of personal preference. As time goes on, it becomes more necessary to make a more uniform standard for a host number of reasons, including spiritual reasons, that it should be one uniform observance. All right, so we're clear? Here are the 3 levels enacted by the Chachomim as to how to observe the mitzvah. Now, to the right of the page, right, you have it in a mauve box. Morty, do you have it? I posted on the Fabrengen chat, because it gets a little bit complicated without a chart. So it's on the Fabrengen chat. You have they posted the chart. You can look at it here. I'll point to it here. Let's see if I can read backwards. All right, so 2 explanations. 2 explanations now. Rabbi Yosef bar Ovin and Rabbi Yosef bar Zvida offering 2 explanations to explain Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel's ruling. Let's look at explanation number 1. Rabbi Yosef bar Ovin, he says, right, this is here. This is Shammai. So Shammai says we light according to the incoming days, as we had learned, right? So the first night there's 8 days to come, 8 candles. Second night you've already had one. There's 7 days that stretch before us. You light 7, and so it diminishes. Beis Hillel says start with 1 and increase, because we are marking not the incoming but the outgoing days. Fairly straightforward, right? That's the opinion of Rabbi Yosef bar Ovin. Rabbi Yosef bar Zvida offers another rationale for the respective views of Shammai, the school of Shammai and Hillel. The school of Shammai say, why do you light 8 and go down? The model is the Sukkot, or the Sukkos oxen. In Hebrew, Porei Hachag. What's the story with the Sukkos oxen? Put that on our pages for a moment. So in Sukkot, there was a unique set of offerings that were brought every day. Oxen, in total of 70. The first day 13, the second 12, the third day 11, and so on. In your, we'll take note this year, in your Sukkos Musaf, you should pick this up before, and I'm sure you even realize why. The Musaf of Pesach is standard throughout the entire Pesach. But the Musaf of Sukkot, in the heart of it, is a new paragraph for every day of Sukkot. Why? Because that new paragraph indicates this different number of korbanos brought on that day of Sukkot. On Pesach, it's uniform. All holidays are uniform, generally. Well, they're one day, most of them. But here, it's diminishing. So it starts again with 13 oxen, the next day 12, and then day 7, Shana Rabbah, they bring 7 oxen, that's a total of 70. So Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvid is saying that the model to light the menorah is taken from the oxen, the order of the Karbonos on Pesach, on Sukkot, which already kind of begs the question, what's Sukkot got to do with this? We'll see that later. We'll see that later. In light of what we have been learning till now, it'll become clear. But now the second view is Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvid, and he says, I'm sorry, we're learning his view now. So the first consideration, Beis Shammai, is the oxen. What about Beis Hillel? This is all Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvid. Hillel says that what's the consideration? The principle, Mailin B'Kodesh, we increase in holiness and we don't decrease in holiness. Okay? So what do we have so far? So far, we've identified the 3 levels of observance. Mind you, should be pointed out for another discussion. In all other mitzvahs, there are 2 levels. There's the basic, there's minimum, and then there's mahadrin. You can add. There's basic tefillin, and then there's mahadrin. Now, to be sure, within enhancing your tefillin, there are many things you could add over and above the law, but they don't get a second category. It's all just called mahadrin. Tzitzis, everything. There's the basic minimum requirement that would qualify for kosher tzitzis or kosher tefillin, and then you can add. CHANUKA is unique that to begin with, the sages added 3 categories. That's for another time. So what have we done? So we've identified the 3 categories, the 3 choices, and we've shared with you the 2 opinions that Ula quotes these 2. Rabbi Yosef Bar Oven, Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvid, each one giving respective different explanations for Shammai and Hillel level number 3. Now, a halachic question. This halachic question is raised now because these 2 explanations are relevant. They're not just explanations, but they have practical halachic ramifications. If you accept Rabbi Yosef, they're both true. The question is, which is the primary one? If you accept the primary one as Rabbi Yosef Bar Oven, Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvid, practical ramification. 3 questions. Question number 1. Let's make this backwards. Does level 3 enhance level 2, which is the view of the Rambam, or level 1, the view of Tosfos? In other words, when the sages came along and said, we're giving 3 choices. 1 candle per household, 1 candle per householder, or the Shammai and Hillel view, did they say that we're going back to the level 1. Level 1 is 1 candle per night. No, not 1, going up to 8 or going down to 1. Or they're enhancing level number 2. You're lighting at level number 2. Each adult is lighting 1 candle. If you want to enhance, you'll do it like level 3, Shammai or Hillel. So we just told you in the question that the Rambam holds that enhances levels number 2, which means that what? Each person will light the increasing or decreasing menorah. Actually, the increasing, because always rule like Hillel. That's a given, which we'll see next. The laws like Hillel. So bottom line, the Rambam rules that each person, which is what we do, each adult person lights an increasing menorah. Tosfos, here I'm pointing here, holds no. That level number 3 only came to add level number 1. And so it's 1 per household, increasing or decreasing. Now, putting in our thinking caps, we are going to revisit the 2 explanations and then realize which one considers which one to be primary. Kind of answered it for you on the sheet. On the sheet? On the sheet. I wanted to say you can cheat and look at the sheet, but that's not cheating. So let's have a look. If we take Rabbi Yosef Bar Oven's opinion, that it's about incoming days or outgoing. Now we just stick with Hillel because the law is like Hillel to make it simpler for our discussion. It's the same principle. Outgoing days. So what's the point? The point is when you go into a house, you look at the menorah and say, you see right away what day it is. You're celebrating not just the miracle of the oil, but the miracle of the oil on this particular night, whether you're indicating it by going up or going down. Irrelevant right now. But the point, therefore, he would say, it would be confusing, in fact. It would be a distraction if each person would light the menorah. You want to have one number that tells you outgoing days, sticking to Hillel. So therefore, if the main reason is Rabbi Yosef bar Ovin, then you would say it enhances level 1. It's one menorah increase or decrease. In other words, Tosfos, who rules that way, he considers Rabbi Yosef bar Ovin to be the primary reason. But the Rambam rules that each person should. Why? Because he says, again, taking Hillel, the motivation here is increase in holiness. Well, everybody should be increasing in holiness. You lit 1 last night, I light 2. So when the sages gave the level number 3, and the consideration was increase in holiness, it's for everybody. So therefore, he says it adds on, enhances level 2. Level 2 says everybody lights 1 count. Level 3 says increase in holiness and light, let's stick to Hillel, 1 every night. Or Shammai, take the model of Sukkot and decrease. Either way, it would be for each individual. Clear? So what have we shown, demonstrated now? We've demonstrated now that these 2 explanations are relevant. They're not just nice explanations, but they're relevant considering, well, what do we do? Is it for every person? Not every person. Is level 3 enhancing level 2 or enhancing level 1? Are we clear? Yeah. No. It's collective for the entire. Yeah. It's more Hillel. Since we rule like Hillel, an increase in holiness, each person should increase in holiness. It may not work for Shammai. If the law would be like Shammai, then it might be per household. But since the rule is like Hillel, right? Yeah, you don't need a menorah. Just take a candle and put it down. Not in the same menorah. No, separately. Who? Yeah. So what's the question? Yeah. All right. Now, look at the italics. The halacha is, in italics, Beis Hillel, each person, each night, Rambam. So we rule basically like the Rambam, that's the widespread view, that each person lights the menorah like Hillel does in increasing measure. Now here's the fascinating part. The 2 explanations are still relevant in the following 2 scenarios. We're now going to quote share 2 scenarios, and with the question of how does one behave the following night. Let's look at the first one. What happened? This is a what happens if. The second night, the person lit 1. He should have lit 2, right? If he wants to do level 3. He's trying to do level 3. But he couldn't do level 3. He only had 1 candle. Pardon? No, a match. You could use a match, whatever. I said the shamash is a separate consideration completely. I said if you don't have a shamash, you got to put the light on when you're off with a match. So that match is and then it doesn't last long. Yeah. For the consideration of not benefiting from the lights, you have the electric light on. We're talking the halacha. The shamash is not a halacha in terms of obligation. It's there to forestall a problem that you might benefit from the candles. So conceivably, again, if you're in a hotel room, you're quarantined, and you have 8 candles and a box of matches, or a lighter, you make, this is the thing, you make a bracha every night. You're fulfilling level 1 of the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. Okay, we're clear. So here's the question. He's in quarantine, right? So the second night, he lit 1. And then that's it. Now the third night, they bring him candles. So now the third night, he's got enough. He's got more. Should he light? It's a third night. Should he light 2 or 3? Answer. If the consideration is only increase in holiness, that's what we're about, not to indicate which night it is. So last night you lit 1. To satisfy Hillel's view, according to Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvida, all you got to do is increase. So in light number 3, you'll light 2 lights. You could light 3 if you wanted. The question is to satisfy Hillel according to the explanation of Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvida, which is one consideration, increase in holiness. You did it. Last night you lit 1. It was the second night. Tonight is the third night, you light 2. But if the consideration is Rabbi Yosef Bar Ovin, which is you want to look at your menorah and know which night it is, you got 3 candles, you light 3 candles, no brainer. So what I'm just pointing out is that these 2 explanations are very relevant still, even as we observe the mitzvah today, namely like Hillel, and well, this is not each person, this is in each person, but this would apply to one person in his hotel room. In other words, even like Hillel. Now the second case, the second scenario, a similar question. Everybody's following this? This is what happens if, yeah? Enough oil or candles for only 2 on the third night. It's a fact, whatever, it got lost here, but the reality. You only have enough for, it's light number 3. How many should you light? So if the point is increase in holiness, so last night you lit 2, and you only have 2, don't go down, at least light 2. But if the point is what? To show the number, which night of CHANUKA it is, with your 2 candles, you're not going to do it. It's confusing. Better light 1 and fall back on the basic. Because with your extra candle, you're not saying it's light number 2, it's actually light number 3. Your extra candle is a distraction. So you can't do the enhance, fall back on number 1. But if the point is, no, you always have to increase in holiness. Last night you lit 1, tonight's light 3, and you only have 2 candles, but you got to increase, at least don't decrease, so you light 2. So here, practically, again, very fascinatingly, these 2 explanations are very relevant in these unusual scenarios. What I want to explain to you now is based on what we've been learning till now in our Hadran. I want to explain Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvida. You will recall, no doubt, this we've been discussing the last few weeks. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are consistent in their many disputes throughout the Talmud, and that is koyach versus poyel, potential versus actual. Now, as we pointed out, was the second example we brought, or maybe the first. Rabbi Yosef's Bar Ovin's explanation clearly demonstrates that. Incoming or outgoing. Beis Shammai says, he says we look at every situation at what we consider to be the primary factor is the potential, is the source. It's all there perfectly. In fact, more perfectly than the actualization, which can have its flaws, because other factors can come and compromise, but in its potential is pure and perfect. So Shammai says, we always strive to relate to everything at its potential level. We went deeper last week, but leave it there. Hillel says, we relate to things as they're played out and actualized, cause and effect. I think you had other words that you used were good. So it's clear to see anyway, in Rabbi Yosef Bar Ovin's opinion, that's clear, right? Incoming, outgoing is potential, actual. Incoming is what's potential to come. Outgoing is what I have realized already has happened. But how do we understand Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvida? And also, what's he bringing in? The sacrifices of the temple. What's the sukkahs, the CHANUKA, and the sacrifices, and they diminished. What's the connection to CHANUKA? Answer. As we explained last week, a little bit deeper, the views of Shammai and Hillel, and we talked about their argument as to what was created first, heaven or earth. The Gemara brings in tractate Chagiga. Each one brings a support from the pasuk that just leaves us baffled, because that what we're left with is a contradiction in the psukim. And surely heaven's created first. Certainly in the light of Kabbalah, we all know that the higher worlds and the lowest world, surely they're not arguing the mechanics of creation. They're not. What they're arguing, we learned last week, is when they said what's created first, what's primary, what's uppermost in Hashem's mind, as it were. What's the objective? Is it heaven on earth? Does earth serve heaven, or does heaven serve earth? That's potential actual. Heaven is the potential, the divine force that creates earth. What is the objective? So we explained that according to Shammai, the whole objective is God sends the soul down into the body, and here we are in this physical world. For what objective? To dissolve it, to ascend, to unite with, to overcome, and unite with the source, the potential source, heaven. The direction is that way. And Hillel says the divine purpose is to suffuse creation, engage it, use it in the service of God. As we explained last week, citing 2 holidays of the year and saying which one would be the quintessential Jewish moment, Yom HaKippurim or Purim. So Shammai would say Yom HaKippurim, that's the ultimate Jewish moment. Angelic transcendence, going beyond food and drink. And Hillel will say the quintessential Jewish moment is Purim. And I choose the two because they're very connected. Yom HaKippurim. But they're very different. So it's a perfect example to illustrate the difference between Shammai and Hillel. So he said, I didn't say this, another example. Here's the question. A person has an ability to make money. He's talented to make money. And if he gets more time, he'll make more money. Should he just make enough money to live, to provide the basics, food, drink, shelter, chinuch, whatever, the basics, and the rest of his time devote to Torah study and prayer? Or if you can make more money, do so. You'll give more tzedakah, not for yourself, but your impact out there in the world will be greater. Your opinion will be heard at committee meetings, because that's the way it is. If you're wealthier, your decisions at committee meetings for the school or the shul or whatever, your effect out there is greater. Very different choices. So you tell me who would say what? Shammai would say, you do just the basic. And the rest of the time, that way. Hillel says, this way. If you have that talent to effect the world practically this way, then do so. So both observant, frum, pious Jews, but very different directions. 2 different worlds. Now we'll understand Rabbi Yosef Bazvida explaining Shammai. It's consistent with this whole idea of Shammai's potential reality, in other words, going to the source. These 70 oxen, friends, represent the 70 nations of the world. It doesn't. That's the view of Hillel. That dotted line, that's follow the line. That's all. That's Hillel. Because he's offering explanation for Shammai and Hillel. He's even answered for each one. Right? So Shammai's consideration is, you clear, right? So why are the oxen diminishing? That they should diminish. That their resistance, their idolatry, their resistance to holiness be diminished. We're battling them. We're diminishing them. That's consistent with Shammai. Shammai's view is shrink the world. Don't engage it. Don't suffuse it. Make it less, smaller, and ascend and unite with the divine. And Hillel says, increase in holiness. Add light to another reach, a further night. It's consistent with the Rabbi Yosef Bar Ovin. It's saying the same thing, but adding a different perspective. What we're bringing out now is that the root of their opinions, the core of it, is what we're learning the last few weeks. Shammai, Hillel is koyach and poel. It's evident here also in Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvida's view. Shammai says decrease, like we're decreasing the power, the force of the 70 nations of the world. And Hillel's view is engage, increase, million bakodesh. All right? So, concluding this part, as we said, the halacha is now like Hillel. In fact, the commentaries point out that the word CHANUKA can be read, can be understood to stand for Ches, Neiris, Halacha, Beis, Hillel. The word CHANUKA itself alludes prophetically, it's 8, third level, and which way? Like Hillel. Why dafka CHANUKA? Because CHANUKA of all the Yom Tovim is all about going out there and lighting up the world. Where do we light the menorah? Facing the street. When it's dark, it's very much a Hillel mitzvah. It's about illuminating the world. Therefore, consistent with that is add in light. We're not about shrinking the world. We're about suffusing it, engaging it with greater and greater holiness. Now, the halacha will be like Shammai when says the Arizal, the Mashiach comes. Once the world is being totally suffused with godliness, there's no resistance anymore, not because we have destroyed it, but suffused it. Now we're ready for Shammai's opinion to ascend. And what's going to be the world's occupation then? Shammai. Learn, daven, know God, purely spiritual, ascent and ascent and ascent. So now it's engage the world in holiness. And then when Shammai comes, the higher order is the whole world becomes united with and experiences the divine source. It's all done. So Hillel is kind of the Chabad. This is the work right now. The work right now is reach another Jew, engage the world, light on public property, use technology, use the resources. Don't isolate and insulate. Shlichut, the opposite. The opposite. These are the two directions that kind of Jewry, or some segment of Jewry went after the war. What do we do now? We're starting again. Isolate, create the kollel, create the, and Chabad went the opposite way. But thank God everybody's now actually following suit. They're taking the kollels and establishing the cities all over America for outreach purposes. So Baruch Hashem. But in general, till Mashiach comes, it's the Hillel, that's the task. Make a lot of money, a lot of tzedakah, build. If you have that talent, you're obligated to do so. Obviously, you got to have your shiurim, and that goes without saying. But here's the point. Make a shiur in your place of business. That's quite, in your place of business, you invite people and you have a shiur, a mincha. If you have that talent, it's needed. Engage, use, build, create. Once the whole world is suffused, then Shammai, if it, like an offering, it all ascends to Hashem. All right? So what we've done now is we've looked at a little bit deeper at the argument of Shammai and Hillel, shared with you the two explanations from the Gemara, Rabbi Yosef Azvid, Rabbi Yosef Ovin, and we've come to realize, thanks to what we learned till now, that these two opinions are really rooted in the core essence views, Koyach and Poyo. Yes, it could be said that. It could, obviously, because, the objective is to bring Mashiach. So Shammai says kind of, bring Mashiach by living the Mashiach reality now. Hillel says there's work to be done, and then we'll get to you. So they're not really a debate fundamentally, both are true, but simply in stages in time. It could also be suggested on a very deeper level. It's not like when the ruling is like Hillel, Shammai is, we are, crestfallen, and we have been defeated, and they wouldn't be angry because they're sages, but they would be disappointed, and this is wrong. But what can we do? You got to follow the majority view. It's not the case. It's more this way. We have to posit the ultimate goal. This is where it's ultimately going. So we're saying it now. Fine. We should all do like Hillel. The world has work to be done. We have to engage it and suffuse it. So even as they're arguing, really on a subtle level, there's the acknowledgement of, Hillel, we'll both say our opinions. Yours is going to be now, mine's going to be later. This was not said, articulated, but on a deeper level, because this is all divine, and it's all Torah, and all true, and all part of God's plan. This was kind of an understanding even then, which, again, after the ruling, Shammai happily observed the mitzvah according to Hillel. All right, friends, have a wonderful, wonderful, inspiring, and increasingly delightful and lightful Chanukah.
Amen. Shkoyach, Rabbi.
Good to have you.
Be
Morning,
well.
wonderful day. Bye.